Say we're now joined by John Maughan to talk a bit of football there. John, how are things with you?
Morning, guys. Enjoyed that conversation there about hurling. I take a great interest in it. So, yeah, and I know Tommy from days back in Clare. Interesting, he hasn't changed. He's still sitting on the fence when it comes to making big calls. Yeah, I'm good this morning. Yeah, we had a cracking game yesterday. Really exciting. And it lived up to all the expectations as regards what we would expect from a Galway Mayo clash. And magnificent crowd, great atmosphere, and yeah, something we're very proud of this morning that we managed to get one over the old rivals.
You're relieved, I'd say, John, are you? Like Jesus, at the end, you were in pole position 1-9 to 9 up, and you're thinking to kick on, and then you're holding on at the end. Some drama at the end.
Yeah, I mean, that's typical of a Mayo Galway clash. And obviously, we were a little bit undecided going into the game. In fact, most people and friends of mine, including myself, we fancied Galway at home. We just thought of course, the big debate was about Sean Kelly and obviously Damien Comer, and if they were going to be fit to play. As it transpired, Sean Kelly was limping around the place for the entire game on one leg. He didn't have the influence that he's had all year. He's arguably been Player of the Year of the championship to date.
Just on that, John. Just on that, on Sean Kelly. I can see why they wanted him out there, but is that the right thing to do for an overall squad as well?
Well, the benefit of hindsight, Michael, probably not, because I think with the exception of one burst in the second half where he laid, I think it was him, he laid on a great goal chance. I think it was for Matthew Tierney or Porry Conroy. I can't recall exactly. But we didn't see those forays into the opposition. He's such an incredible athlete, and he's such an intelligent footballer. He just didn't have the influence on the game yesterday. And of course, maybe in hindsight, it might have been better at looking at an alternative, because he clearly was limping around the place. Damien Comer also hamstring, but he had a big influence in that 35 minutes he played in the first half. He was a real handful for our full back line. Anytime he lurked in and got a diagonal ball into him, he was just like a man mountain in there, and he caused us all sorts of trouble. And unlucky enough, he could have had a goal. But they were two significant losses, shall I say, albeit Sean continued to play on the full game. But Damien Comer, to him going off at half time, I suppose, was a welcome sight from a Mayo perspective. But no, look at Mayo, like, we're full of spirit and heart. Like, I mean, we were a little bit unsure, uncertain as to what we get, particularly having seen such a blow-apart performance against Louth here in McHale Park and obviously against Cork last weekend. We just didn't really know what to expect. We always felt like playing Galway, once the draw was made was Galway, that would spark a Mayo team into a good performance. And while it wasn't brilliant, of course, wind affected both teams, particularly the first half for Mayo. The shot selection was poor. Like, it was very, very difficult to get inside the scoring zone, and with Galway packing the defence like we did in the second half. It just didn't end up being the great football spectacle, but it had everything else, the excitement. As I say, the drama going down the last end. Killy McDade had 2 efforts on goal. Our keeper got caught off the line, and on another day, Galway could have snuck it. We just had a little bit of an edge, and I felt probably on the balance of things, probably deserved to get over the line.
Just to ask you, John, a bit more about Galway here. The likes of Comer and Shane Walsh, they're not far from 30 now. This was year 4 for Pádraig Joyce. Is it getting to that stage now where the window might be closing?
Yeah, I mean, look at we talk about Shane Walsh. Like, I mean, he's had a very poor year by his very high standards from last year. And you just wonder, like, I mean, he had a very poor National League final and the championship to date, even that last 3 against Armagh. Last year, you would put your hand up. He said he's going to absolutely nail this. It could have been so much different for Galway had he scored that free above that late free against Armagh. They're now have an extra week to get the Sean Kelly recovered, to get Comer another weeks of preparation into him. But you're right. I just begin to feel. Pádraig did suggest, and I know he made a statement at the very start. I think he gave himself, was it a couple of years? He said, if we don't win the All-Ireland, I'm here to win an All-Ireland. If we don't do that, and I forget, was it 2, 3 or 4 years, he said, I'm out. So I got a couple of texts last night and say, look, will PJ go? I'm not quite sure whether he will or not. I think he'll be very, very disappointed with where he finds himself this morning, because they have a lot of quality. But just when it came down to the home stretch, Matthew Tierney was just a revelation last year. Killy McDade was, in the running for Player of the Year as a midfielder, playing very deep this year. An awful lot of people would feel that had he played a little bit closer, maybe in his best position at midfield. But then he's trying to get he's trying to get his best 15 on the pitch, and that includes getting Maher into midfield along with Pádraig Conroy. There's another player who's given incredible service to Galway. You just begin to question, can he go another year? So there's a big question mark over Galway. Mayo have a lot of youth coming through. Roscommon are lurking in the background. And maybe Pádraig this morning might be looking over his shoulder and say, listen, can I go? Have I got the energy to go? He's a very, very successful, a very busy businessman, has his own business, obviously. And you just begin to question, will he go? I think Galway will be anxious to hold on to him, because where will they get anyone better? He's got so much experience and guile. And it'll be interesting to see what happens here over the next couple of days. And I hope he hangs on, because he's a good guy.
Yeah, we talked about the lack of jeopardy in the All-Ireland series, but the way it worked out the last week has changed everything for a lot of teams. Do you know what I mean? And it changed Galway's season completely. It ripped it up, and it ripped up Mayo's season, even though they've been able to turn it around again. But just, you wanted to read out that comment about Shane Walsh, and I do think it is an interesting one. Richard Hogan just says, ironically, could Shane Walsh's transfer and the football he played with Crokes have been to the detriment of Galway? Something he's never had to do before, probably go the whole way through a winter. And he just hasn't looked himself, John, this year. There's no point in saying any different.
No, there's no question. Like, I mean, we know the talent. We all know the talent is there, but without a doubt, he's underperformed alarmingly. And I know Pádraig certainly would not have been happy to see the transfer request coming to join Crokes. He did take a number of weeks off after that All-Ireland Club final. I think he went down under for 7 weeks, when all his teammates were back here busting their guts, getting ready for National League and what have you. I know there might have been an element of unhappiness. I can understand why he would do it, to get away, to refresh. But like, I mean, without Shane Walsh firing, like, I mean, he missed frees yesterday in the first half. He had a couple of strikes that he took. Ordinarily, he put them over blindfolded. But there's no question he underperformed this year. He had a poor season by his very high standards. And I know Pádraig will be particularly frustrated with him in particular, for a combination of reasons. But it is what it is. But hopefully he'll come back refreshed, because, and I cannot say for certain. It's an interesting comment. Did his transfer affect his performance with Galway? Well, you could argue we'll never know that, but it certainly possibly didn't help.
And what about what Mayo did in this game? Kevin McStay, he completely changed around the team. He took out the likes of Matty Rowan. Another thing is, there was a little bit of nastiness there as well. I know the footage is inconclusive, but it looks like Ryan O'Donoghue swung a boot across Sean Kelly, and obviously he was carrying that ankle injury. So there was, a bit of an edge to Mayo.
Well, look, there always is an edge to Mayo. I mean, and but there's never any nastiness. I have to say, there's great respect. I mean, we hate them for 364 days or 5 days of the year, with exception of that one day when we play them. But I mean, there's a universal respect for Galway Mayo. I would hate to think, and I doubt very much. I know Ryan O'Donoghue is an extreme competitor, but I would hate to think that he deliberately targeted Sean Kelly by stamping on him. And I did see the footage last night. It is inconclusive, and I would like to give him the benefit of the doubt. I wouldn't think that Ryan O'Donoghue, he's a fierce competitor. There's no question about it. And look I mean, all you got to do is look at Jason Doherty's jerseys. I think Aidan O'Shea had the jersey ripped. That kind of stuff is part and parcel of championship football. I don't think there was any real ugly nastiness in the game. That incident, I have to say, I would give Ryan the benefit of the doubt. But Kevin McStay did change it up. He had to. There's no question about it. There's a lot of questions. Conor Loftus has been tried, I think, for 10 consecutive days as number 6. Clearly, that was identified as an issue that had to be addressed coming into this game, because the way Cork came right through the heart of a defence in the closing quarter last weekend was an issue that had to be addressed. He did address that issue this year. I was surprised to see Matthew Rowan not starting, to be quite honest with you. I believe he had a bug, the same bug that Pádraig O'Hora had this weekend. He wasn't part of the 26. I do know that Matthew Rowan was not feeling himself last weekend in Cork. So maybe the rest of him, particularly with now looking at the dubs, and he has done remarkably well on Fenton previously in Dublin. So it would be fantastic if he comes back reinvigorated and back to himself. It'll certainly give Kevin another option. But I think, the changes they made, bringing in Jason Doherty and Kevin McLaughlin, he suggested afterwards that he wanted the experience and the guile of those guys, what he felt was going to be a real tough encounter. And they played their part for a period in the game until they were both Cody Shore, and it was freshened up by bringing in legs. McLaughlin, not the most complete footballer in the world, but by God, has he got some energy. And we saw him like he was stumbling and falling into the, I forget what Galway defender it was before he kicked the ball, even though it was disallowed. But he brings enormous energy. Like, I mean, he is a manufactured footballer who was a great cyclist until he was 18 years of age, but he brings great energy. So I think Kevin deserves an applaudance for changing it up. He had to. He made 4 changes yesterday, starting 15. And I think, obviously, when you win a game by a single point, all those decisions were the right ones to have made. So we can't argue with that.
And you got David McBrien coming in, scoring one of the, like, it was such a thrilling goal. Simple enough when you think about it. Runs through, hand pass, take it back, and finish it. But the composure, selling it the eyes, for the goalie.
Yeah, he's been on the Mayo squad for the last couple of years, and I know he's been talked about so highly down here. But unfortunately, he's had injuries over the last 2 or 3 years, so we haven't seen the best of him. This is the first time we're seeing David McBrien and the qualities that he has, and we haven't had a genuine fullback for perhaps a decade or more. He is quality, and I can tell you, when he pulled the choke yesterday, he won the ball, I think, and played a 1-2 about 60 metres from goal. But just, he put on the afterburners when he punched that ball into Aidan O'Shea, and you just left 2 more defenders for dead. And but, unlike a lot of full backs or cornerbacks, when they get into that position to put on the blinkers and to blast the ball, he was coolness personified. He just cooled the jets and kicked a fantastic goal. Like, that was the winning of the game. Matthew Tierney on the other side, a couple of minutes later, had a brilliant opportunity to round our keeper and roll it into the net with a little dummy. He didn't. I would have expected that had Matthew scored that goal, well, you'd be talking to a man here today and not to me, perhaps.
I'm a big fan of Pull the Choke, John. I hadn't heard that one before. That's
Mike, how would you know about it, Mike? You don't have the choke. You don't have the choke.
That's true also. Just a quick question for you here, John. Detox 101 just asked, I watched Cork Mayo 89 last week for Teddy's memorial. Some game compared to today. Does John think the football of yesteryear was better? What do you reckon?
I have to say, with the exception of a few games in the championship, we have been bored watching some of the football. I have to say it's been appalling in many instances. We're lucky enough that we get these big rivalries. And I think it's only now we're beginning to rock and roll and see some quality football. But some of the stuff that we've been exposed to in the last, not just this year, the last couple of years, this mass defense stuff. I mean, we're playing now with 2 or 3 quarterbacks. I mean, the mark has been a joke. I mean, 80% of them are one down on the floor. So there's no question we have a problem. And I feared that we might struggle to fill stadia, but yesterday we saw Pearse Stadium absolutely choked because those great healthy rivalries that exist between the Galways and the Mayos, and even now coming into a quarter-final between Mayo and Dublin. I mean, crowds will still come out in huge numbers, but unfortunately, what we've been serving up as entertainment has been a disaster. 1989, it was kind of, I won't say reckless abandon, but it was kind of end-to-end entertainment, and it certainly was a lot easier on the eye from a supporter's point of view. So I can understand a lot of people are getting frustrated. We saw that at some of the pool games, small crowds here at McHale Park for the Mayo Loud game. I think there's only 11,000. I think it was around 9,000 down at Cork. Ordinarily, you would expect if the entertainment value was better, you'd have another 10,000 at those games. So yes, there's an issue. Larry McCarthy mightn't necessarily agree because here he's looking at the overall figures coming into Croke Park, and they would suggest, yeah, the pool stages have worked, but I'm not quite sure. Certainly it's a debate for another time, but yeah, entertainment-wise, we've been struggling a lot of the year.
Just on, do you think that will evolve and we will go back to maybe more free-flowing open football, or do you think there's kind of rule changes or things needed to make sure that are supposed to encourage better football?
Look, it does require changes, no question about it. I mean, kickouts, maybe having to pass. I mean, there's a myriad of them, and everybody has an opinion on what needs to change. But look at particularly watching the Mayo Loud game. We had 10 options on a kick out late in the second half, and I was suggesting at the time we should have done something like the Mayo ladies did yesterday in that particular game, that we should have sat down and said, come on out to play. Because when you see an opposition 15, not behind the halfway line, but behind the 45, and a goalkeeper having 10 options to kick the ball out to say, look at, where's the entertainment? And I know I was sitting around, Joe O'Connor was on one side, me, uncle of Killian and the two boys. And I had Willie Joe Padden with me, and we were just looking at each other in complete frustration. And I said, now's the time to protest. Sit down and say, Louth come out to play. I'm not just suggesting it's Louth because lots of teams play this defensive setup, but yeah, it was boring. And Mayo nearly got caught and going down the home stretch. We only fell over the line with a 1-point victory. So Louth might argue, well, it worked for that game. It certainly didn't work the following weekend when they went out to play Kerry. So look, I think it does require rule change. And as I say, we could talk for hours of what might and might not work, but experimentation is required, and I think now's the time for it.
And John, like, one thing that isn't boring is Mayo for Sam, and just having the hype train going again. Like, I love this. I love when this happens, and Mayo are going to do it, aren't they?
I'm a little bit fearful, to be honest with you. I just think 3 weeks in a row, I'm a little bit worried that we mightn't have the energy. We don't really know what to expect next weekend. But the one thing I would suggest, the fact that it's Dublin, the Mayo lads will be absolutely relishing this opportunity because, this is their choice of hobbies. This is their liberation of ego. To go up to Dublin next Sunday and play in front of, I'd say, 70,000 crowd. I mean, what more does the young fella work? What more does the young fellow want? Isn't that just what it's all about? Just the opportunity to go and express yourself and enjoy, providing an entertainment, hopefully. And I expect we will. But no, it's wonderful. Mayo always give. Like, I mean, they're a fantastic team. I know I'm talking about beyond county, but the one thing you're guaranteed with Mayo is entertainment and a bit of drama and lots of talking points and perennial losers. I mean, I grew up in the decade of 70s, never seeing Mayo win a championship game. Here we are now, competing at the top table with the best teams in the country every year for the last 20 years. And we're bringing that incredible support with us. I mean, you've got to be thankful for the likes of a Mayo and the entertainment they provided. And I genuinely mean that they have done that, and they keep on giving.
Mayo